Is Mark Sanchez guilty?
In Indianapolis, a 69-year-old truck driver suffered a brutal through-the-cheek wound. Prosecutors say former NFL quarterback Mark Sanchez took that man's own knife and intentionally carved the man's face.
This is Christopher Winchell with Crimes Digest.
Let's get right into it.
Shortly after midnight, early October 2025, in downtown Indianapolis, Indiana, former NFL quarterback Mark Sanchez is in town to call the Colts-Raiders game the next day. Meanwhile, behind a nearby hotel, 69-year-old Perry Toll is doing what he always does, picking up cooking oil in the back alley in his work truck. Routine job, middle of the night. According to the affidavit, Sanchez confronts Toll about the truck blocking the alley. Some reports cite that Sanchez was using the alley for wind sprint. Then, in escalation, and Sanchez tries to enter the man's truck. The 38-year-old former quarterback then allegedly grabbed at Toll's phone and prevented him from making a call. Sanchez's physicality then escalates. According to the state, multiple surveillance angles show Sanchez grabbing Toll and throwing or shoving him against a wall and down to the pavement. Toll later tells police he thought Sanchez was trying to kill him. Toll breaks out the pepper spray at Sanchez. Sanchez wipes his eyes but keeps coming, according to Toll. So Toll escalates. He pulls a knife. The affidavit continues that Toll then stabs Sanchez 2 or 3 times in the torso. This is not a minor cut. This is lethal force territory. Sanchez is stunned, turns, and takes off down the alley, bleeding. But Toll isn't unscathed. He ends up in a different hospital with a deep cheek wound, reportedly cut right through and affecting his tongue.
We've walked through what happened, but here's why prosecutors think this is felony battery, not just a misdemeanor.
The state's picture is simple. Sanchez is the aggressor. He's younger, stronger, and intoxicated. He confronts the older working man. They will point to the cameras, the medical images, the disfigurement of Toll's face, and Sanchez's unclear statement about what happened that night. From a prosecutor's standpoint, this is how you build the case. Highlight the older victim and the younger former NFL quarterback. Set the table with fear. Then introduce Sanchez's escalation. Last, argue that Sanchez used the knife offensively against Toll's face.
So on paper, that's a clean prosecution theory, that Sanchez took the knife and intentionally cut the man's cheek. But the defense is not walking into court empty-handed. The defense will not deny Sanchez mishandled the earlier part of the encounter. He was intoxicated and aggressive. But that's phase 1. Everything changes the moment Toll stabs him. Phase 2 is a completely different legal world. A stabbed person does not behave like an aggressor. He behaves like someone trying not to be stabbed again, grabbing wrists, pushing hands away, turning to flee. In that close-quarters scramble, the cheek wound could have easily come from a 2-second instinctive struggle over the knife that Toll introduced. This isn't speculation. This is how knife fights typically unfold, the defense will say. So that's the best version of the case from the defense side. But the real question isn't whose story sounds better, it's what survives pressure. Now let's put the prosecution's case under cross-examination. Point 1, no clear video. There is no public footage of the exact moment that the knife contacts Toll's face. Intent cannot be assumed. Part 2, financial motive. Toll is suing Sanchez and Fox Sports for significant money. Jurors are allowed to consider financial interest when weighing credibility. Point 3, outcome versus intent. Yes, the cheek wound is horrific, but the law punishes intent, not just outcomes. Was Sanchez trying to hurt Toll or just trying to stop the knife and escape? Without proof of a knowing or intentional act, there is no felony mens rea. So that's what survives under cross-examination. But none of this matters unless it actually fits the statute.
Indiana's felony battery requires that Sanchez knowingly or intentionally touch Toll in a rude, disrespectful, or angry manner, thereby causing serious bodily injury, which the state will argue is present based on the serious permanent disfigurement, allegedly, of Toll's cheek. Sanchez, subject to a pretrial ruling by the judge, most likely will not be able to claim self-defense at the moment the knife comes out, because under the law, he was the initial aggressor. You can't generally get to start a fight and then suddenly claim you were defending yourself. Segment 1, Sanchez is the aggressor. Battery and unlawful entry into the truck. Sanchez, crime done. Segment 2, Toll escalates to deadly force. Sanchez becomes the stabbed party. The knife is in play. The struggle is chaotic. The only legal question for the felony battery is, can we say, beyond a reasonable doubt, that Sanchez meant at that point, after he was stabbed repeatedly, to touch Toll in a rude, disrespectful, or angry manner? If the evidence is equally consistent with a desperate attempt to escape and get away from Toll with an accidental slash of Toll's face, the answer is no.
So that's the law, the elements the state must actually prove. Now the question is, does the evidence meet that standard? Here's my ruling. But first, a reminder. Mark Sanchez is presumed innocent unless and until the state proves every element beyond a reasonable doubt in a court of law. That presumption never disappears. It stays the entire trial. And that burden, beyond a reasonable doubt, is the highest burden in our justice system. It's more than suspicion, more than probability, and far more than he probably did it. Jurors must be firmly convinced of guilt. If the evidence allows a reasonable alternative explanation, the jury must vote not guilty. Now, with that standard in mind, here's what survives scrutiny. On the misdemeanors, battery, unlawful entry, and the public intoxication charge, guilty based on his actions and appearance on video. However, if Sanchez later claims he was drugged, that changes everything. But with the current evidence, these misdemeanors stand, in my opinion. On the felony aggravated battery, not guilty. Why? Let's go through the main point. Toll introduced the knife. It was Toll that stabbed Sanchez first, multiple times. There's no clear evidence that Sanchez, in that moment, intended to injure Toll after being stabbed. Additionally, the cheek wound is equally consistent with a chaotic, instinctive movement during the escape. There's no clear video of an intentional slash, and Toll has a financial incentive in his civil lawsuit. Taken together, the state cannot prove beyond a reasonable doubt that Sanchez knowingly or intentionally carved Toll's face, as there is a real possibility that Sanchez was merely attempting to escape and did not knowingly or intentionally touch Toll to injure him. With the guilty misdemeanor counts and the not guilty felony count, yes, juries issue split verdicts like this all the time when intent is unclear. If you were on this jury, felony guilty or felony not guilty? Let me know in the comments. For more crime news, cross-examine, subscribe and like, and read more at CrimesDigest.com. And always remember, the truth matters, and so does reasonable doubt. Thanks for watching. See you in the next case.